Welcome to Watercolor Wednesday, and my name is Kathy Futrell. We're here at the Church of the Palms, and today we're going to be painting irises, so come join us. All right, here we go. We're going to do our iris today as a painting, and we're first going to sketch. So I have two photographs, and I've actually made two versions of the same, this is this image right here, and I love the way these leaves that support the stem and the lovely flower. And then in this particular one, I did steal the idea of the leaves and I made my own composition, whereas I chose not to include this bud, but just to draw the flower. So here's what my plan is today, is to work from this flower, and since I have it duplicated here, I'll just fold it so I can hold the image in one hand and really take a look at this to draw it. So to draw, I always begin with my shapes that I see with the flower. And I'm going to let this flower really fill the space, and so that the stem, and I don't want the stem in the middle, I kind of want the stem off to a little bit of the side here. And I will probably just do one of the buds like I did in the original the other day when I was practicing for today. I want the leaves to help fill out the composition. Now, one of the challenges, and there's something I was thinking about really on the way here today. I was thinking about how drawing from nature, or even from photographs, but looking at nature really helps you. Well, let me just say that when I draw and paint subjects from nature, it makes me really appreciate the world around me. And what a blessed world we have to look at. The trees and the spaces between the branches of the trees become like poetry of loveliness to view. And look at these beautiful colors. This is sometimes a little bit of a challenge to get the colors that are showing up. Now, I need to make this petal just a little larger, so I don't mind fixing that, as it should be there. You can get lost in the detail easily, and oh my, what lovely detail there is. Okay, this is a little folded piece. So sometimes when you're drawing something like this, notice that it has a curve. Sometimes we have a leaf, but in this case we have a petal that is coming from here. This is almost like a dividing line right here, right here. And from that we have a petal hanging down and two on either side. And notice that this one touches, this one has a little negative space, and then we have these folded petals that are all joined together right here. And this is almost like a little butterfly shape above. I know they're technical terms, and I'm sorry, I'm not very good with those technical terms, but here I am back to this folded piece, and that comes along like this. So we're observing, and the more we observe the beauty of nature, the more we have, I believe, a greater appreciation for this world we live in. And so flowers are a lovely, lovely subject matter. So is doing landscapes. Maybe your perspective was, when we were doing perspective, well, there's a lot to learn with perspective. There's no doubt about it. The perspective here is how this comes out. And notice that the highlight, even though it's just a lighter color through here, is going to help you with this turn. So the lines here are going to go something like this. We want to have the feeling, so we use our paint strokes to help that turn. This little butterfly call is a design within the flower shape, and right here we have this lovely shadow that's happening, which helps to define the curve of that space. So this is going to be a little darker right there. And here we have another little turn piece, and this will be dark there, and a shape that does like this, and a curve that comes and joins there. Sometimes this works out and I go, wow, that was lucky. Okay, so now we have another little petal that waffles out here and comes back, turns back, and there is a shadow here. Now try to observe those lights and darks and those shadows. And so on this side, we're going to have a curve, and this is a yellow piece right here. And this comes like that. We can see the top of that. It's very pink. And then we see the bottom, it starts up here. So we can observe this negative space right there. And we know that this is going to follow the line here till it gets to about right there. And then we have a waffled edge, and it joins back up. All right, so this is going to be very dark under this petal. And this one, there's a little negative space right here, and then it too comes out. There is a light piece here, and a little piece of, there's that yellow. Well, I don't know what that's called. Who knows their flowers? What's that little, these little guys right here? Does anybody know the technical name for those?
Petals.
No, these are petals. But what is this little fuzzy stamen? Or would that be the stamen part of the flower then? Okay, where thank you, that does make sense. And here I have another little negative space. And I'm trying to match that up. It looks like I've made this one a little too long, but I think I can get away with it. Okay, and it does curve out. I think I'll curve it out even more. Maybe I could shorten it just a little. Okay, I like that. Now here, the bud, remember we were making sure we're not quite dead center here. Sometimes there's something on the edge. Oh, I know, there is something here. And then the stem comes straight down. And it's a supportive stem, so it's not a thin one. And right here, I'm going to make the bud and bring that a little bit of an angle, and its bulb, well, this would be, what would this be called? Well, it's not in the right place because this one actually touches, but I'm going to leave that just the way it is. Now remember, we were going to add some leaves to the composition. So let's just add some for the background. And I like to touch the sides. Not always do I touch the sides, but I like the way these two would go. And let's come out behind this flower and go in this direction. And we'll make this a little thinner. It always would get bigger as it goes back down. And let's make one that comes and maybe peaks up here. And one more. And there. So we've touched the sides and we've created some interesting negative space. So let's begin the flower. Now this flower, if we're back here with this loveliness, we're going to need some yellow, and this is my bumblebee yellow. All right, we're going to need some pinks. So I'm going to use the magenta. This is lovely magenta. It's called wild fuchsia, really. But if you have that, if you don't and you have opera, I think you can add a little purple to opera to get that color. Or you could use alizarin. This is my purple. So we're also going to be using greens. I'm going to be using a yellow green. Well, I must not have cleaned my brush very well because I contaminated and made a really nice natural green. So anytime you need a dull green, just remember red is what you need. And then, of course, I usually have my palette, I usually put water on my palette to kind of get my colors ready to come up. This is a Viridian. This is way too bright. This is, I need to dull it with a little bit of my red to make it more of a natural. And anytime you add complementary colors together, you're going to gray that color. I also wanted to say something about, in the past, I have painted irises from life. Sometimes these irises, this is a photograph of various irises in our backyard, Jim. We're up in the mountains. We have all of these irises in our yard, and this one has some of the similar colors that we're going to do. And I always think about putting a dark background. So I think of drawing the flower because it's light and having the dark background. But today, instead of putting any background whatsoever, I'm going to keep the paper white. And I'm going to focus on these lights and darks within the flower. So let's begin with some washes of that color. And I'm going to have a paper towel with me, so if I get too carried away with my wash, I can calm it down. And for some reason I want to start right here, and this is that lovely pink, and there are light lines that are coming out. So if I keep those little white lines right there, and if I come down and sort of suggest these strokes that I see as I do the painting, and maybe even go around what's happening here with that little piece of stamen yellow, then I can, now this is going to be a shadow right here that I will add on top. We always work from light to dark. Now as this goes in this direction, I am moving out with the strokes, and I see a lot of pink in here. And I'm going to next lay this brush down and pick up some water. Make sure my brush is clean, because I do seem to have a little green on it from painting with it the other day. So I take the water and I soften this edge, and I soften these strokes all the way to this edge, because it's a very pale pink. And I continue this down where I'm going to put my purples with just the stroke. Water right here. And I'm going to add the purple. And the purple next is going to go, and I'm hoping this is still wet enough to blend. And then I may come back with the purple, the magenta, to soften this up, to continue this blending. Okay, so the strokes that I'm making are really with the side of this brush. Okay, so let's get that magenta going again. And here we're softening up the purple. And really pushing that magenta. These will be a little softer on the edges, a little more wet on the edges. And oh, I really want some more purple in here. Really heavy right here. Okay. And then I'll just keep bringing that magenta into this. Sort of like putting another layer right on top. But where the edges need to be light, where I need them to be a little lighter, I'm going to go back to my brush that I had the water and just add the water to keep this spot light and to keep these edges light. Now, once this dries, I can still put some more linear pattern into this petal, but I've been able to match the color that's going on And right here, I see a little spot of light, and I'm just going to push that, and I see a few light pieces here, and I think I'm going to just push a light there, and push a light there, just with picking up a little paper towel. Okay, back to my purple. This purple is going to be really strong here and here, so I usually start at the top. I'm not really sure why I begin here, except for that was such nice color to get started. The purple I'm using is called, wow, I have it written there and I can't read what it is. It's an American Journey, beautiful. Oh, amethyst. It's called amethyst. Royal amethyst.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Can't get better than that, right?
You cannot get better than that. Yeah, very, very beautiful purple. Now, you notice that my strokes are still going up in this direction, and right here, there's so much magenta to be blended into that edge. So I'm still picking up the magenta and blending that into the purple. And I like the way that glows. And I want to put a little more purple. This is really dense right here. Sometimes it's the way you use your brush, and sometimes it's the way you blend your colors. So here I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I need a touch more water. Notice that I was started out a little too dry there. And I want my point a little better, so there. This was just to get it started. And this seems to be pretty much just a very nice dark. I want my lines to be nice and clean against the white, so I have to be careful and not to go too quickly where I would lose the edges that I want to show. The petals are not always perfect. They have little bumpy places. This magenta now is going to fill in this spot where I see the magenta in the photograph. And just let that run together. So now I really got to go up here and deal with the color that I see, and I'm going to have to mix this time. I will be mixing the purples and the blues together, purples and the magentas together. And what I tend to do, and not always, but I start sometimes either with a light wash and then come in with a dark. In this case, I'm going to start with a dark wash of all the pattern and line that I see, and not be afraid to get bold and dark. But you see the disadvantage of working below and then coming above is that I have to keep my arm out of the painting. Typically, I forget to do that, so do be careful. Here I have some dark. Now, let's see what would happen if I just take the water on the brush. This is just water. And start to soften. Oh, sorry. And there's not a lot of change in this area, but there are some lights and darks. And this helps to give you the laciness of what, you don't want an outline. You don't want it to look like an outline, so you have to lose that outline. But notice that it seems to get darker as you push it down here. I like some of those light spots in there, so I'm going to leave them. Now here, I'm going to do the same thing along this edge, although I don't want to touch here yet. I'm going to start over here and let this dry. I will begin to put in some pattern of dark. And this is what I'm looking at right here. I keep painting my arm. And putting in your strokes for the veins. So I think when we paint flowers, the observation is, what are the colors? First of all, what are the lines and the shapes? And then look for veins. These little indications, like I would call this linear path right here a central vein in this petal. It is a very dominant vein, but at the same time, these edges are folding and are catching shadows. So where it's the very lightest, the fullest amount of light is touching. Where we see these shadows and reflections being made, this pink is reflected here in this flower, is a very beautiful photograph that has caught the essence of this flower. And sometimes you need the sunshine. Whenever I'm trying to photograph a flower to paint, you need to have the sunshine striking it. And it's interesting that I've seen artists paint flowers that show the transparency of the sun shining through the back of the flower because it's very thin. Now I'm putting a little bit of that pink in here now. Probably needed a little more pink, and I just lightened it by lifting it. And all right, I leave my brushes here so I can try to remember what do I have on that brush. I forget which brush has what on it. All right, let's see, where am I? I'm going to go ahead and move over here and this side and do some more of these edges. And pay attention to where those shadows are. And there's a shadow here. All right, so let's try adding the water to this and see how that works. Well, yes. All right, so sometimes when you, this is starting to dry, so it still is allowing for some of it to remain as sharp lines. So you are keeping your sharp lines. Now I'm going to have to go with more sharp lines up in here when this dries. And this is turning more pink, so I'm going to pick up a little of the purple. And where I see the lightest, the absolute lightest, I'm going to clean my water again and just do a very soft wash to keep this light area. In fact, I think I'm going to pick up right here. I want to keep that light spot and this light spot. And just continue. This has a little more lavender in it, or purple. So let's put that in. And as it moves in this direction, it does get darker because it's moving away from where the light is striking. All right, now under this edge, on this edge right here, we have some dark. And we're going to move this. And this little piece right here is pretty dark. It's in shadow. And it has a nice little edge to it. All right, and let's get this dark. We can probably put in a few of these dark lines now. And here, I think I needed to make that move over. Let's try putting in our water. This is very pale. And just, it's dry enough that it's not really blending, but we have still that delineation of light and dark. I think I'll leave it just like that. Pushing a little bit because I feel like that's a bit dark. That could be a little lighter. Maybe it could have a little pink in there too. Yes, a little pink. And maybe I need a little pink over here too. That was nice. Now, let's try some pink right here. Now, these two areas were wet and they ran together, so I have to wait for that to dry and make this a little heavier later. Now, this is an edge that's light, and then back here it will be dark. This area needs a little pink, so I'm just now painting what I see. That is pink, and then, of course, I just used my water brush, so now I go back to putting water on that brush, bringing that around, and then softly adding here. Now, maybe this is a good point. I see one more place I need to put the pink. That's here and here. And this pink is striped for some odd reason, or at least it looks striped, and this one seems to be more solid. Okay, so I've got that. Now I have some pink in here. And I'm not done here yet, but let's put a little pink in here. And I'm going to get darker. I can tell that needs to be darker. Now I'm going to clean this brush and just go with the yellows that I have on those stamen pieces. So I want to use that really bright cad yellow or bumblebee yellow that I have right here. And I'm just doing the strokes for the yellow. And it has to have a little texture, so hopefully I've left the shape read as that. Now, there is a reflection going on here. There's a little bit of yellow in here. I see some yellow reflected in a few areas here, and then I'm just adding the yellow on the stamen. So when you do those little pieces of yellow, look for where you might have that reflection going on in the rest of the flower. Okay, now I need to finish this flower up and do my little bud and then my greens, and we'll be done. This goes pretty quickly, I think. Now here, I wanted to darken what goes on, and that's shadow, and that goes definitely behind this shape. And so it makes a very crisp, dark line. And here we have the shadow that I didn't paint earlier. So now I can apply that. I can also put in this little wedge of a shadow where this petal is bent. And this is where I know I need to add some more darks. So I'm just doing the brush work, going toward the center that will help this bulge out. And I'm going to use some more of that purple to do the same thing here, curving those lines to help that read. And there's a darker place right here. And I want to soften this up. Forget which brush is clean now. Let's just soften a little. I'm just taking a little to lift. Okay, and do I need to do some more dark lines here? I just need to make this appear darker. It's really dark in that shadow. And I sense some lines here and a definite line shape right there. Just softening that up. All right. Now I have some more shadow up in here, and I need to finish these areas that I'm not quite done with. So the purple, and this is not that heavy of a purple. But it needs to have some contrast. right here. I think that this needs to be a little darker here and a little darker here. And this is that shape that follows the contour of this petal that's folded underneath. Okay. And what I see here is a little bit of pattern. I'm also going back and making a little more delineation between what's happened there in this edge. Just a few lines really sometimes help to bring out that detail that you see.
Almost looks like another flower sitting within
Oh,
a flower.
that's so sweet of you to say, Sig. It's amazing just drawing from nature and what you see, just using your eyes to create. I need to bring out that little butterfly shape, and then we'll do our greens. Well, after the petal, after the little bud. I'm going to put not quite that dark, but the purple that goes here and here, and just fan that out. There's even a little bit of orange in here, which, why not? And that is because of the glow that we have going on with, I think, this beautiful little flower here, not flower, but stamen, if that's the case. Just an edge, just a little bit of an edge, and I think I need more pink right there. And I need more, so the more you look, the more you see, oh, that needs that, and that needs that. And so a little purple here. Now this flower bud is quite different. It's got a lot going on here. So I'm going to begin, I might come back and put a little bit more here, but I'm almost done up there. This is quite dark, and I want to put some blue. I want to add just a touch. Now that is a nice ringtone.
Sorry.
At least it's not my ringtone. No worries. Okay, so that is a dark, and all I did is add purple and blue together to make that. And then here is another dark area, and then here is another dark area, which makes this all pretty interesting. So it sounds kind of a reverse of what we always say, light to dark. Sometimes it's just kind of nice to get these darks in, and they help us with defining the lights and darks of the subject. I'm just moving around with my eyeball to see if I have any more dark spots that it would be nice to push the dark, because I think that adds to the realism. And I think in art, we're often trying to portray that beauty of nature that we see. We just can't help it. It's part of our psyche to appreciate that which is beautiful in nature. This is a light blue, and which is a little foreign to the subject we just painted. And since it is, I'm going to put a little blue right here, because I can. And I feel like there is a little blue right here. Okay, wow. I hadn't expected to do that. So this is really has a purple, a magenta to it, but not quite that dark. And here, I actually see, I want it to match the flower, but I also want it to be a bit unique in itself. And there's some greens in here. So now we get to our greens. All right, so we talked about having the brighter yellow green and a darker green, in which I'm just going to put a little purple since I've got it there. This will make it very, very dark where we need the darks. And here I'm going to just show the dark that I see, and I'm going to make this kind of dark going underneath this flower. And then the stem, starting with some darks, and then switching to some lighter green so that I'm softly having some variation to the stem and not just a solid color. I might even take a little bit of this yellow and pop that in.
It looks like there's another bud within that stem.
There is a piece over here that's wrapped around, and sometimes that's like a sheath of transparency that I can observe here, and it has a little pinkish purple to it, but it's almost white, like a skin.
Yeah, I know.
So although it's not showing up a lot, I'm just going to have that happen, and I want a yellow-green to be here. This is repeating my bit of yellow, and there's a glow on this side, so I'm just going to lift and leave it. This is where I saw the green in there and there. So I'm just adding that and letting it blend. And this stem also gets darker. If you don't want a dark line to show up, like right here, I just had a dark line, I just scrub on it and lift, and then keep going with my paint to show light and a little light and dark here. I like to have one side tend to show dark, and if the stem leans as this one does, it would always fall dark on the bottom side and light on the top side. And because this is so white here, I could just do a little bit of, well, I think a bit of yellow maybe. I'm just going to accentuate these strokes and just leave that light. Well, I just sort of painted it and lifted it. Now I'm going to push that. I put a little paint, now I'll lift. All right, so we have just the leaves left to do, and I'm going to start with a bit of a point of light at the top of most of these leaves and just work them down a little darker. Now I could refer to my reference here, and there is some blues that I might want to mix in with some of my greens too. I tend to, whenever I have a leaf fall right behind a flower or a petal, I tend to go ahead and let it go darker from that experience of being next or beside of something. And it's best if I had let that dry a little bit more right here before I started putting a leaf behind it. And I want some difference between the two, so I'm letting this go darker with the purple in the green. And I ran over my drawing line, so I just went ahead and made it a little bit bigger. I'm leaving that little white edge so that I've lost it on one side, but I've kept it on one side. And then I just pick up the lighter color again and blend that in. So I started a little light at the top and it got darker as I moved down. This one might be a good one to put some blue in. it will kind of help match up what is going on with the natural iris leaves. They are a little on the blue side, and we don't want all the leaves to be the same color. We want to have the variation that nature has, and even within the same petal, we're going to have different things going on. So it's not always going to be the same all the way down, although I decided to add a little yellow there. All right, now here's the problem again. I'm not letting myself get, sometimes you could just turn this upside down and you could say, all right, I don't want my hand to get into the paint, and maybe a little more yellow here on this tip. I'm going to also start this one and keep it fairly light. And vary the greens as I move down. Oh, I like that. I've got a little yellow going on with that. Now remember, there are veins in these leaves. They're a little subtle, but at the same time you would want to take your strokes so that there is a sense of linear pattern going on in the leaf itself. Let's get a little more color change here, as this leaf would be a little darker there and much darker here, and then in between we'll add a little light, and that will help it to bend. So I'm darkening here with the greens and the purples to go behind this stem, and also the darks at the bottom here help to stabilize what's going on. And then I'm just going to take the lighter green in between these two and move them toward each other. And this is a nice little touch every now and then when you can add a lightness at the bend, and you have the feeling that there is light striking in this spot. So it has a nice feeling too. Matter of fact, if we really like that well, we could do something like here. Just lift a little bit more. Just lift a little bit more. Just give a little light to a spot like that. And let's see, that's just water, and that's just water. Okay, now we only have one more leaf to go, and we're all done. So we're about ready to paint, aren't we? Are we excited? Oh, yes.
The camera was on.
What's that?
I hope the camera was on so I can watch this again and again.
I do believe it is.
Good.
Yes, yes. And thank you for joining me today. It's always a pleasure. It's as much a pleasure for me as I hope it is for you. And I just got to say, gosh, I finished the whole daggum thing here. That makes me feel great. This was fun to paint. And sometimes I forget where I am and what I'm doing, but hopefully it helps you. Voila. I think we're all done. Have fun painting your iris.